What's up, y'all? Thanks so much for joining the stream. I've been meaning to get this out since March. Yeah, it took me a little longer because I have made 200 slides, about 200 and something. So I was like, you know what? I'll keep delaying the stream until I'm ready because I really wanted to present my sequel for y'all. So as you know, I've already got my first book. It's out on my website, www.netvoid.tv, and it's in PDF format, and it's basically like my beta test because I'm receiving glowing responses already and also some constructive feedback, so I'm so excited to incorporate that. However, before I really just go out and publish my first novel, I thought it'd be cool as a, cryptographer to kind of keep going and write my sequel. I know that I have 4 books planned, so I'm almost under the impression that after 4 years, when I've completed all of them, that then I may go ahead and publish them all together, because I kind of want the extra time to make everything cohesive between the transitions of each book, because I've got a lot planned. And yeah, so basically, as y'all know, this first book, it is very much inspired by Tolkien's Silmarillion. However, I feel like he drew a lot of influence from the Nag Hammadi. So this is kind of your textbook, Tolkien inspired series, and this is very, very much like my, what I've found fascinating about Gnosticism, which is what Tolkien pulled from for his, I've drawn so many maps before, and I kind of have some ready for y'all to show how Tolkien used a lot of the old Greek and Norse mythology and also Gnostic gods. So I kind of pulled from that and decided to make kind of like a spin-off. And yeah, I'm workshopping it so that it's completely like politically correct, and because it's encompassing a lot with this fantasy. Anyway, so I decided for my sequel, I really, after having read the Iliad and the Odyssey as well, I wanted to, here's the thing. Okay, so I've got other books here in front of me that I want to show y'all. So I read this last year, Divine Comedy, Dante's trilogy. It's basically Inferno, Purgatory, and Paradise. And I highlighted it. I don't know. I always can never tell if you can see or not. But I highlighted. And so I took my inspiration from here. So this was published in about the years 1000 something or 1300. I'll have to double check with Dante. And then after him, I read Paradise Lost. So Paradise Lost, as you know, was in the 1667. And this is a story that is basically a retelling of Genesis from the Bible. So after I read this, then I got into, obviously, I bought myself you guys know, the original King James 1611 Bible. So obviously not the original. It's the 400th anniversary edition. And yeah, it's stunning. It's archaic. And then I also picked up this copy of the complete works of Shakespeare. So my sequel is really much going to be inspired by these two, and this is why I have them on the front cover of my page, because I'm really, really inspired by the King James Bible, 1611, and William Shakespeare, but also, as y'all saw, Paradise Lost and the Divine Comedy, aka Dante's Inferno. So now that I've written kind of my Gnostic first book, now I'm gonna write like a spin-off of the King James Version and William Shakespeare. So the King James is a trilogy because a lot of people might not know. This copy actually doesn't have it because it was taken out of the Bible at some point. But the Apocrypha used to be included in the King James Version. And so it's a trilogy, right? You got the Old Testament, then you got the Apocrypha, and then you got the New Testament. So I've decided to make a trilogy as well. So after my first book is basically a trilogy, so that makes it a quadrilogy. So the first book, let me explain this. This first book is kind of a one-off, kind of like the Silmarillion is from Tolkien. It's heavily inspired by the Nag Hammadi, but it's also, like the Silmarillion, a precursor in the world build to my next trilogy, which is kind of like the Old Testament, Apocrypha, New Testament, or is also like the Lord of the Rings trilogy, if that makes sense. And hi in the chat. Thanks so much for being here. I'm trying out this new green screen. It's actually a little bit better, but it still glitches out. Like, I don't know how to fix it completely, but we will keep going. I have a presentation for y'all. So I was hoping that we could go through them because I've got a lot, 200 slides or so to get through, so let's go. I'm gonna click it now. So it's gonna have some audio at some point, so if you hear background noise, that's what happened. It cuts in and out, but that's because they're AI videos that I've done. So I've done all the artwork for this presentation. I've used Midjourney at first, and then I switched to Grok Imagine. So yeah, I'm really happy with it, but it really kind of only gets you 5 seconds of AI video generation. So I'm in the future going to adapt these into full-scale AI movies, like at least animation. And then later on, if there's ever a chance for this to be live action, amazing. Now, I want to use the Mortal series. Oh my god, I can like... Okay, there we go. I want to use the Mortal series, but obviously Mortal Instruments already exist. I did a stream of that recently. Mortal Kombat exists. I'm going to do a stream of that soon. And those have already set the precedent for the Mortal series. But I was really inspired by a lot of series that kind of just go by one name, like Twilight series or the Alien series. So I kind of wanted the Mortal series, but I am fine-tuning exactly what it's going to be in the end. Because I'm showing so much of my journey online, I'm gonna be like potentially tweaking as I go along. Like, I kind of want to strengthen the cryptography in the encoding in the titles, so you might see me do that in the course of the next year. So the titles might be changing. However, I'm just presenting to you like a prototype of what I'm like currently working with, and yeah, I'll kind of highlight some areas that I think could improve. And if you guys have any feedback, I will try to turn the chat box on. I think it's off right now. It should appear potentially here, so I'll try to answer if you guys have any questions, because first and foremost, this series is obviously for myself. I want to leave behind something that I remember, like this, for example, Net Void. It's my cryptography name. It means a variety of things, but I think most recently I just discovered that net is 1 and void is 0. Well, yeah, I just kind of spawned to me. That wasn't the original intention, but then when I realized that, I was like, that's pretty cool, because like what I'm writing about is the simulation. So 1s and 0s makes perfect sense. So net 1. Void 0, 1, 0. So it's kind of like this binary narrator that is telling the story. And if the first few pages, like this is the only copy that exists, by the way. I've printed it in this kind of journal format because I'm editing it. So like I'm going to have chapter markers and stuff like that. And so anyway, so the first few chapters is kind of like I've drawn out the different pantheons in the world. Oh my god, can you see? The different pantheons in the world, right? Right now I have like 0 to 23. Oh no, wait, there's probably more. 36. I probably chose 36 for a reason. So that is subject to change. Like, a lot of this is my own personal research, and it's completely flawed because it's limited to what I've found. Forgive me if you spot a lot of inconsistencies. I'm still trying to correct it all. But ultimately, I want it to be like an almanac. I want it to feel like something you can also participate in. So that's why I'm also considering adding, like, because I covered Dungeons and Dragons and Cyberpunk board game, then I'm also considering adding an element to RPG, because I think that with the world build already, it's very, very conducive to hundreds of characters, if not thousands, if not millions, if not unlimited characters, if you wanted to plug into this world build. So that's kind of why I'm building it, like, not just because, hey, it's a story, but it's also like a story in a way to kind of share our combined folklore in the pantheons and gods and anyway. So I've never seen anything like this. If you have, let me know. I've seen like animations of the world build of the ancient Greek world and those gods interacting with each other, but I've never seen, or like, I've always covered the Lightning Thief series, and how he's the son of Poseidon, and like, so that whole world build. I feel like I've never really seen a world build where all the pantheons merge, so I wanted to build that. But because I am a Gnostic, a Gnostic Christian, it's influenced by the Gnostic angle. And I think that's, just something that I wanted to do also, because the Gnostic story has not been told very well many times. It's been obscured from history. There's a lot of texts that are missing. You kind of have to piece a lot of resources together to even form your own opinion, and at the end of the day, it is your own opinion in terms of Gnostic lore. Like, there's not really a cohesive one final, like, there's so many branches of Gnosticism is what I'm trying to say. And part of being a Gnostic is syncretism, is studying other religions and forming your own, like, opinion from those. So that's why I'm here. I think the Matrix series really inspired me. Again, that's kind of why I'm doing a quadrilogy. There are 4 Matrix Matrix movies. And of course, Matrix is about a simulation. I grew up where the Matrix pretty much inspired me to go to film school, and the Wachowskis are from Chicago, where I spent 10 years of my life, and also I graduated from Cinema Arts and Science degree from Chicago, where the creators of the Matrix are from. So I even, knew somebody who worked on the Matrix as a VFX, editor. So I have this kind of like fascination with the Matrix series, and I think they told the Gnostic story so well. And I'm just, using various books, as you can see, to kind of bring it back. And hopefully through this, it's kind of like, something that you get to role play eventually. So that's kind of my introductory spiel about this all. Okay. So as I said, I am playing around with the cryptography here. I'm just going to play it, and I'm going to talk over it. If it's too fast, I will try to, give me a moment. I'm going to move some books. I'm going to try to make sure that I can pause it for y'all so it doesn't move too fast. Forgot to shout out Plato, which inspired me so much. The Lost City is all about Atlantis, and Plato is kind of the earliest surviving work about Atlantis. So in the end of my first book, you actually see the incarnation of Plato play out. And I hope that I illustrated it, because obviously he's fair use. A lot of movies have already depicted Plato, but I hope that through the lens of the Pythagorean brotherhood that I've been kind of really tapping into for the last few years, I get to bring some of Plato's kind of teachings back. And the academy that they go to in my series is very much inspired by Plato's academy. So yeah, it's thanks a lot to his work. Also, he is kind of one of the early Gnostics, if you will. And a lot of the theories that come from Gnosticism actually are from Plato, 300 BC or so. And then you get Gnosticism about 0 to 100 to 200 AD. That's kind of when it's at its peak. And then the Gnostics basically get kind of, well, in the year 300 and something, I believe it was the Council of Nicaea, the Romans basically ousted them, and a lot of the Gnostic books were then forbidden or banned. But what remained was, Plato's work on Gnosticism, and a lot of other stuff remained. Here, I'll show you another book. Sorry, before we go on. This book really helped me to understand Gnosticism because I actually got the Nag Hammadi. Where is it? I got the Nag Hammadi, which is your traditional Gnostic text. This is this is the book that all entry-level readers of Gnosticism will be invited to read. They'll be like, oh, have you read the Nag Hammadi? You can find it online for free. I've just got a version because I like to draw my books. But yeah, it's okay, but it doesn't really tell you much about the pantheon hierarchy. So how in Greek mythology, Hesiod is your guy for basically the entire story of Greek mythology. Well, Nag Hammadi doesn't really give you that, so it's kind of missing. But if you read the criticism, which is against heresies, Irenaeus of Lyons, he was around during the era in the 2nd century AD when the Gnostics were basically being, forbidden to share their wisdom and knowledge. This guy, coincidentally, because his book was preserved, because it was a criticism of Gnosticism, it survived, and it's actually a really good, because he's setting his thesis, he goes into fine detail to describe what a Gnostic believes and the actual pantheon, because it is a polytheistic religion with a monotheistic kind of I don't know, it's a mix, because there's the monad, which is the one true source, number one, but then there's the many aeons. So it's very Tolkien-esque again. Anyway, this book really helped me. So if you really actually want to become a better Gnostic, I would recommend this book. You can also find it online for free. And yeah, now we're ready to rock and roll. I'd also say I did get this, but I'm not exactly read it all, the Bhagavad Gita. And I hope to incorporate more sacred texts from other religions in the future. Okay, here we go. So, mortal lust, this is a word that I've been playing around with for a long time. And so, there was one time where I changed my username and I completely lost it. And I was like, you know what? No, I miss it. So, I got it back before it was gone. And yeah, so now I have this idea for this copyright of Mortal Lust because nobody else has it. But I'm still tweaking it because I don't think it's perfect. My thesis is that lust is kind of conducive to your gnosis or your knowledge. So lust has been, since the simulation, fallen and has now a bad rep. But in this kind of wicked, twisted theory, wicked, I mean the book Wicked, where the Wicked Witch is actually good, plot twist kind of way. That's kind of how some of my theories are developing, and yeah, I'll keep going because I think you'll understand what I mean. Besides, I have 200 slides, so we gotta keep going. Alright, I made this really, really quick mock-up. I don't know, this is meant to symbolize the Ouroboros, or the snake, or the reincarnation cycles. So, LUST is really what I'm doing here, is ripping the L, ripping the UST, and giving it the first letter of each title, LUST. T. So that's fundamentally what I'm trying to say. Like, fine, it sounds like a bit edgy, a bit over the top to go with a title like this. However, if you title it like this, Mortal Lost City, Mortal Unknown Decode, Mortal Scripted News, and Mortal Truth Revealed, you don't really see the lust, and you don't have to like have it on your bookshelf like that, but I am not entirely sure. So this is Lilith, Lilith, Kali, and Sophia. So they're kind of the main protagonists. The first book, like I said, is pre-simulation, Genesis, Eden, Atlantis, and ancient Greece and Rome. That's online on my website. This is what I'm writing now. 33 to 1900 AD. And Library of Alexandria, Temples of Jerusalem, Great Fire of London, the Vatican Archives, and so on. And each of these titles is also a cryptogram. Lost City, the Holy Bible, Unknown Decode, Old Testament, Scripted News, 1611, KJV Apocrypha, and Truth Revealed, New Testament, with Reborn Again and Again, and Immortality, right? So, as I was saying, it's technically a kind of review of the Bible, right? The Bible is a trilogy. So I've taken Gnostic and the trilogy. So the Nag Hammadi plus the Bible is now a quadrilogy. Yeah, I think I did that right. So I've done this Gnostic book. So now I'm focusing on my second book, which is the Old Testament, right? So now there's a few ways you could break down like the gematria of my series. So Mortal, I thought it was interesting, God is pi, because ultimately I have created this pi-like figure, infinite as symbol. Life Force and You and Me, it's also about a story about you and me, because it is about our mortality. So the Lost City is literally a rip off the Nag Hammadi, each chapter, right? I've got an inspiration. And then, like I said, the Old Testament is going to be 39 chapters, like the actual Old Testament. Let's review my first novel, because I think I've been talking all about it, but I need to, like, portray the visuals now. So, Lost City, like I said, I've kind of branded it a bit different. So, Mortal Lost City, kind of like this. I sketched it. Yeah. So Mortal Lost City is the Holy Bible in ordinal. And it is about the Holy Bible. So it's a series about the Holy Bible, starting with the Nag Hammadi, so it's your Gnostic Christian. And, you know, theogony from Hesiod, Homer's Iliad and Odyssey, and the books of Tolkien and Paradise Lost, like the Iliad and the Odyssey, right? So Paradise Lost, like I said, is a main influence, because it also inspired The Lord of the Rings, if you didn't know. Yes, this book from 1667 inspired the Lord of the Rings series, and it's also going to inspire my series. I'm actually ripping a lot of the characters, so Satan, and I'm introducing a new character, Lilith. Lilith is not in Paradise Lost, so I've brought her to the story, and I've kind of just, you know, given it a new backdrop and everything. And these are the movies that really inspired the first film. So it's Jason and the Argonauts, Atlantis. I grew up on Atlantis, all of that. Obviously Harry Potter, Tolkien, Rings of Power series, and Percy Jackson. Let's talk about the characters. It's taking me forever to paint them on AI, and I hope you like them. I took hours and hours and hours to perfect them, and they're still not great. But this is what we have. So we're going to start off with the primordial, who I made up. I made these up, but I wanted to tell the story from like a very nonpartisan kind of, this is perfect timing to pause. Although I am Gnostic, or because I am Gnostic, I take influence from a lot of pantheons. So even though I'm also heavily Christian, I don't want it to feel like it's overwhelmingly Christian, because ultimately I believe in syncretism between religions, right? So these are characters that I've made, and I will explain them shortly. But then I've also made different types of gods, or of immortal gods. So they're called Order, Chaos, and Exalted. and Void. And then you get your traditional God, Jesus, the Holy Spirit or Shiva. So Hephaestus, fire, for fire. So each number also is Pythagorean numerology. So whatever that number is in Pythagorean numerology, like one is exerting of power, 2 is compassion or duality, 3 is the Holy Spirit, so it's like communication, air, 4 building, material, fire, 5 transformation, change, thoth, writing, 6 is a number of love, 7 spirituality, 8 is power, and 9 is knowledge and wisdom. So when you get your numerology readings, and you could get you can do your birthday, you could do combined all your numbers in your birthday and reduce it Pythagorean numerology wise, or so that's your life path, or you could do a myriad of ways to get your numerology. So but fundamentally what those numbers represent will always be the same. So this is why I've kind of gone off the Pythagorean numerology here, and these are your aeons. These are your Gnostic aeons that up until this point are aeons, and then once the fall, like in Paradise Lost, once Satan falls, that the simulation is created, and these are your archons. These are your simulation gods. So I hope that makes sense. We'll keep going. I'll explain it a bit more as we go along. So I've just chosen an arbitrary version of said number, just the ones that are kind of the most mainstream or popular, but have you ever played Guess Who? You know how the images swip? So that's how it's going to be. So these are I'm going to pause here because I like these characters a lot, and it took me a while to figure what I wanted to do. So I called these my primordial gods. So these are the primordial gods, and these are the gods to every pantheon. And because I really feel like they're just universal energies that every kind of religion believes in. So sound, and I've named him the unknown, and I keep using these crossed out zeros and the AE like aeons for a reason, because it's part of thematically what I'm going to do with naming etymology with my aeons and things like that. So keep in mind that I've kind of broken down the 2 primordials into sound and light. And this is pre-simulation. So pre-simulation, sound and light already existed, and that's pretty cohesive to what the Bible says anyway. So the unknown and light, the ineffable, and they create a song, and it's very much like similarly in how the Eru Iluvatar, who is kind of the creator of the Lord of the Rings world build, he's the god version of that world, and he creates through music, and and in the Old Testament, in Genesis also, that's how God creates, is through the Word of God. So I hope that this is kind of relatable. So I think I've made a little video of them. Let's see. So yeah, basically these are Suzuki. So they're divine pairs. So at the very top of the universe, these 2 are divinely paired, sound and light, and they create everything. But ultimately, the first thing they create is the pre-simulation. So it's like a heaven before heaven, and it's called the pleroma in Gnosticism. Right? So let's take a look at my first. Now that we've seen these. This is kind of the realm, so Nirvana, for example. But let's take a look at my order gods. So my order, I've given pi. Order, for example, you've got Orpheus. So Orpheus is kind of debatable where he goes in the pantheon, but I took the ancient mystic Orphic rites, and I've included him as of one of the very highest creators. Why? Because he's god of music, and if Tolkien is writing that the ultimate god is of music, then I will go along with the Orphic hymns. Now, I found Norse to be really interesting because it's Ymir and Alhambla, I believe, the frost giant and primordial cow, who are the first Zizikis in order. This is from X-Men. I just wanted to include it. They have Eternity and Infinity. Like, literally, go check out the X-Men catalog online that you will find those characters, right? So, other series have done something quite similar. So let's take a look at my chaos gods. So you'll recognize Tiamat. She's a Sumerian chaos water goddess. And then, of course, chaos from Greek mythology. So I've kind of really chosen the protagonism for chaos because I don't know. I did draw a lot of influence from ancient Greek, again, because of Plato. And really because of the Iliad and Odyssey. And I also really do love Hesiod's work. So a lot of this is really, really, like, if you haven't read it, read it already, because this year it's coming out with the Odyssey movie. And yeah, a lot of it is about how the gods influence humanity. So in this sense, a lot of what I'm doing is very, very similar to one of the oldest books, 700 BC or something like that. Okay, so Chaos also in Cthulhu, Azathoth, I believe that's an H.P. Lovecraft for Old Narnia. You got Tash. Lovecraft, he has a Suzuki thing going on with Azathoth and Nameless Mist. So Suzukis are divine pairings, right? In Gnosticism, so the monad is one. I'll talk to you later, but every number has its pairing. So even though the monad is one, he has Barbella, which is his female companion. So I'm doing that for so every divine god is divinely paired. You don't see them all here because I didn't have all the time to put their divine pairs. And also, these are, again, just a selection. You can say you want to swap out with your own pantheon, go ahead. Like, this is just a template for, and again, the most mainstream names. But I did try to include some other cultures. So, like, think about Tianzin, Chinese polytheism, or Ein Sof or Ein Sof, Aion and Ananke. So I'm trying here. It takes a lot of research also to figure out where they rank, and it's very debatable, contestable where they would rank. A lot of it I am kind of using my creative liberty to kind of figure it out. Void gods are one of my favorite gods. I identified a lot with the Void, obviously, Net Void. So Void, this is how he spells it in the whole Protestant Bible, KJV. But you can also take Erebus, which is the Greek god of the void. But Bythos, void god of the Gnostics, is also equal my username NetVoid, which is cool. I love that in Egyptian lore they have the Ogdoad, which is these pairings, divine pairings. So Kek and Kauket are of the void. If you've seen this meme go viral, this is the god of the void and his Suzuki, his divine wife, pairing Kauket. So see how ancient this pattern is. This is not something I'm inventing. I tried to use, this foundation of character build that is already existing, but a lot of people have forgotten about and didn't even understand that this was a thing. So Void, I also have, Shinto gods. In Jewish mysticism, you have Ayin. Buddhism, Sunyata. So Tekore, the Void in Christianity, Bythos, and Siege in Gnosticism. And I love that they've gotten this like celestial kind of skin, because that's totally what I was going for. And I really don't know how I would be able to do this in real life and film it with live action characters, because a lot of this is kind of like verging James Cameron's like Avatar in terms of like the skin and like the alien kind of god looks. Like a lot of them are just wearing celestial fabrics, as you can see. So I almost really do think this lives better as an animation, an AI animation in the future. So Tolkien does have a character called, so he has the Void, but it's not a character. Cthulhu has Nyarlathotep and Shub-Niggurath. Scientology has the Oversoul. X-Men has Apocalypse and the Black Queen. Interesting that the Black Queen is a void goddess. I kind of did some creative liberty there. Dragon Ball, I grew up on this series, and yeah, there's like void gods there too. In Sailor Moon, I also grew up with, and apparently Queen Beryl kind of represents this void goddess. So it's everywhere, and I'm just, copying the template here. Okay, so let's take a look at the aeons. The aeons are your 1 to 9. So there's only 9 numbers in numerology, right? And so we're taking that and we're running with it. We're running with it. Now, take again your favorite God and put him there. Like, it does not have to be the Christian God, it does not have to be Jesus. Rank your religion's pantheon is what I'm saying, because you'll find that there's this pattern that emerges based off Pythagorean numerology, which is what each number dials down to. 6 is always love, 7 spirituality, 8 power, 8 abundance. That's why you have the sun god. 9 is your troublemakers, but they're also the gods of knowledge and wisdom, so that's why they're troublesome, That's why Satan and Lilith are the way they are. So I'm really trying to tell their story. Now, Gnosticism is not very well known in terms of Sophia and Thaletos and their story, so I will get into the nitty-gritty. But let's go into God, okay? I didn't just want to show you, hey, this is what Christians believe in, right? I wanted to show you, okay, how can you RPG here? So let's look into our God. How can you RPG in this world where you set up, like, maybe your character and then the gods that you ascribe to, or like that are within your pantheon, right? So Atlantean has Atlant, yes. Dreamtime, which is Australian. Egyptian Het, how Het, part of the Ogdoad that we talked about. Sumerian Lamun Lahamtu. So this is Arab mysticism. Potentially, I might be incorrect with some of these. Again, these are going off some research online. El and Asherah were very well known Canaanite gods. They kind of got adopted into Babylonian mythology. Chinese polytheism, the Jade Emperor. Dravidian Hinduism, Brahma and Saraswati as your very godlike, interchangeable for God. Zoroastrian, you got Zervin. Atanism, you got Aten. So these are your real interchangeable gods for any pantheon. This is what I love. Judaism, you got Elohim. Greek, you got Aeon. And Nemesis. Now what I did run into that, some of them do have a divine pairing, others do not. Like the Christian God, for example, does not have a divine pairing. Jesus does not have a divine pairing. But I kind of played off of that, and I let the story kind of tell itself who and who didn't have a divine pair. So Celtic, Kabbalah, I transformed Kabbalah into their own gods, and I don't know if I'm going to keep that or not. That was kind of just a sketch. Roman, Eternitas. Taoism, I kind of found that they have this grand pure one concept. Again, God. I like this Gnostic monad that I made. Branch of Christianity also has their own God, like the Christian God, but also got the Catholic God. Mayan, Slavic God. So, hello, everybody is welcome here. Like, when I'm telling this story, keep in mind that you can retell the exact same story. With the gods that you believe in, right? Norse, I really like this Buri, and then Dogo god. Inca, Aztec. So now we're getting up into, and I have the timestamps here. Inca and Aztec, Sikhism, Voodoo. And then I wanted to include some more modern religions, but I kind of will run into copyright issues with some of them because, like Thelema potentially, and some other ones like that. So I kind of have left most of those out. Oh, well, here I did include Thelema's. I had to. Jehovah's Witness. Wicca. So again, I actually saw that Wicca is copyright too, so I won't be able to include these, but I have drawn them anyway. Yeah, it's a shame. So definitely copyright. I can absolutely not include him. Copyright, potentially copyright, but I think this one's definitely copyright. So what? Oh, definitely all of these are copyright. But here's Tolkien's Eru Iluvatar and X-Men's version of God. I put Phoenix because she is kind of like the main girly. She has the most power. So, let's go into Jesus' character. So, number 2 is, I put water there because Jesus does have these famous scenes with water, but also holy water. But yeah, I'm also naming him Jesus. And, hey Spirit! How are you? Thanks for joining. I hope the audio is okay, by the way. I have some music going on in the background. But anyway, so in Egyptian, you got Nun and Now Net, Dreamtime. So as you can see, a lot of these are water themed, so I did keep that theme. And it's odd to think like potentially Jesus Christ matching with some of these characters, but you know, you never know. Jesus. Vishnu is definitely interchangeable with Jesus, and he has this as a Lakshmi. Zoroastrian. I'm not sure if these are totally correct. Again, please correct me if you see them. This is a group effort to make sure everything is totally good. But Shinto and Korean, I tried to. I have spent some time in Korea, so I wanted to include these, even if it seems like a lot going on. But my main character is Jesus. You do not hear the music. Maybe that's for the better. Here, let me try to add some. I tried to add a bit louder. Is it okay? Okay, so your aeons, again, you're sticking with the numerology 1, 2, 3, 4, but also ether, water, air, fire. I'm also playing around with these. I might change the order of them. But this is so far what I'm going with. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I hope you can hear me now. And the music. My favorite characters are 9. Because I really resonate with Lilith, and I really love Sophia in Gnosticism and Kali in Hinduism. And Satan is an interesting character that I think hasn't been told the exact same way that I'm trying to tell. So these are gods of knowledge. So Hecate is one, Sophia another one, and in my series they're gonna be friends. So like you kind of get to see them interact because they're in the same class. The class is knowledge, and the class is kind of like a school, right? And these are your main characters. So they're still aeons. They're still angels of God. They're kind of like archangels. They're 9. So their wisdom needs to commit errors or mistakes in order to learn. So that is why they commit errors. However, the real villains are 10, the demiurge, Saturn. And villains is a subjective because, if wisdom needed to create, make a mistake to create and learn, then the demiurge was created as a learning or an academy, or so mortality was created as a place to learn, right? So it's not like they need to defeat the demiurge. It's just a villain in the sense that potentially in the last book he kind of is redeemed in a way. And then you kind of grapple with who is the actual real villain. But anyway, so then we have the archons, and the archons are all inspired by planets and and the way I've done it is very platonic spheres in the distances these go. So Saturn, Pluto, Neptune, Uranus, Earth, Jupiter, Mars, Sun, and so on. And then after your archons, I'm also playing with the Plato's theory of souls. So you come in and you're either a tyrant, a sophist, an artisan, a poet, prophet, warrior, merchant, statesman, or you level up and your soul is climbing up and achieving greater gnosis. So it's kind of like a world build. So here's my character Tiamat. She's the goddess of chaos in the Sumerian lore. And so the storyboard. So yeah, I'm introducing Lilith to Jesus. I don't think this has been done before. I think Lilith is interesting because she is kind of also a Christian hero in a sense in terms of like modern day, really. So I'm kind of playing around that she's this Gnostic Christian Jewish mysticism goddess, right? Lilith, Kali, Sophia. So Act 1 is kind of setting the scene, right? So source known as light and sound create order. As you saw before, order create the pantheons from the hymn. The gods all in the pantheons go to a primordial academy. God crowns Jesus as a prefect. And Lilith longs for Jesus for wisdom, but he turns her down, right? And then you kind of go into, so Lilith, Kali, and Sophia are all friends, and they represent number 9, class 9. They share the same traits of wisdom, lust, and rebellion. So lust helps them level up in wisdom. So that's kind of what the theme of Mortal Lust is. So I do enjoy this, like, the idea of them all hanging out in this paradise, which is heaven before heaven. It's a free simulation, so it is all benevolent, and it is incredibly inspired by how benevolent the Nag Hammadi and the Gnostic texts are. So this is your aeons, and they prepare for the crowning of Syzygies, but they're also preparing for this new world called Earth. So because after they're crowned, Syzygies means they can marry and procreate. So when they procreate, they're expecting to make 11, 12, 13, 14s, right? So they're expecting to make more numbers. So they've already got that down. So Kek and God, so 0 and 1, are perfecting this orb. So they are calling it Earth. And it needs at least 7 days to create, right? So primordial, benevolent, void God, and this is not only in Christian. I've got them all. So like in the actual book, wherever it is, they're all going.
Spirits entwine.
Through the veil.
But what ends up happening is that in the background, I've also got these aeons, going to classes for the next 7 days. But after the class, the idea of these classes is that they need to find their Syzygy. They need to find their divine pair, and basically this is like very Bridgerton, right? Like, think of it that way. Like, their divine purpose is to create more gods. So they are kind of courting each other properly and in this academy, and the ultimate crowning is of this divine pair. But what ends up happening is that the gods of 9, like Lilith is a god of 9, and she's this rebellious figure that does not want to submit to anyone, not even her divine pair, and her divine pair is Satan, right? So I am telling this story of like if Lilith and Satan were divinely paired pre-simulation because they are archangels. What would the story look like? And so I went on this entire like rom-com that's kind of what I grew up with, vision of what would that look like. So anyway, I've got Lilith kind of like deciding her suitors for, even though there's this whole crowning and she, at the end of the day, she's like trying to defy God, but that's her nature. She's a 9. She's she lurks for wisdom. So what ends up happening is she meets Orpheus, because Orpheus is performing the immortal hymn, and he's very high up there. He's a god of order, so he's even higher up than Jesus, and she kind of fawns for him, right? So that happens next, so she's kind of all over the place.
Entwine.
Through the veil, our souls
eternally bound. In cosmic light, our
spirits. Do I know entwine. Where the word Earth comes from? No, I don't know. Spirit. I don't know where okay, let me read this. So, Spirit, this is one of your characters is inspired here. I won't say which one, but, okay, so, Satan and Lilith, again, are syzygies. And so Satan, I've kind of written him to be a very, very loyal, because he's an adversary. He's like a lawyer of God. So first and foremost, pre-simulation, he's very, very disciplined. So he hasn't been led astray at all whatsoever. It's actually Lilith. So Satan asks for his soulmate Lilith to be loyal. But she obviously is not, because she wants to test the boundaries of this whole crowning. So anyway, so a lot of people are noticing that there's a fracture in the plan. So why? Because there's this fifth dimension. So a lot of the gods that can have a lot of higher powers are actively writing the fifth dimension. So they basically create all the like the Norns in Norse mythology, or the fates in Greek mythology, how they're constantly writing the world fate, whatever. So, okay, that's happening, right? So, while Lilith and them are kind of breaking off their ties, a lot of the older gods are noticing. So, they hire, because Eros has his own syzygy, but he's a god of love, so his duty in the Pantheon Academy is to act as like help his other Aeons fall in love with their syzygys. Eretz in Hebrew? Interesting. What's the etymology? So anyway, Eros called to urge Lilith to align with her soulmate, and he does this by showing her true worth. So there's this whole scene where she is a rock star, and he basically helps her kind of shine her own light in terms of her own talents, basically. Anyway, so Lilith and Sophia are roommates, so they kind of are talking, and Lilith's like, well, yeah, I'm interested in like Jesus, but I'm also interested in Orpheus, and now Eros entered the chat. But of course, I still have Satan, so she's kind of saying that. And Sophia also feels torn. Why? Because Sophia also longs for someone she shouldn't. And in the traditional Gnostic text, this is what happened, so this is why I wrote it. But Gnostic Sophia longs for the void god Bythos for wisdom. It's a very, very, very similar thing. So anyway, Eros, I have this whole thing play out where, anyway, he gets hit by his own arrow, I know. And he is under a love spell. And then when Satan realizes that she got really close to the god of love, Satan declares Lilith his enemy. So an enemy in this context, it means like no longer severed, like no longer soulmates, no longer paired, right? So it's kind of like this horrific thing, but it's to start the fall. And a lot of this is happening without it's caused by a lot of miscommunication. So it does kind of resolve itself eventually. Sophia steals the orb of creation, okay? It's a lot of things happen that I'm not showing here, so some things have been skipped. But if you want the full story so far, I do have it online. It is this book right now. So if you're interested, go to www.netvoid.tv. Have a look. It's free online. I've included a checklist if you want to review it and change anything. Let me know. Anyway, Lilith, of course, Sophia has stolen this orb of creation. She throws it. And remember that this orb has been created by God and the void earlier, like 7 days earlier, right? But she ends up stealing this orb and throwing it into basically kind of like the void. And it creates this simulation, right? And because Sophia went inside it, Lilith ends up following her because it's obviously her best friend. And Eros, still under his love spell, it goes in as well. So that's how you get Lilith and Adam trapped in Eden. But anyway, the demiurge becomes evil and too powerful, and Sophia ends up escaping and finding her way back. But Lilith and Eros have been trapped by the demiurge. And Satan creates sin, who falls in love with the demiurge. So Satan has also gone into the simulation, basically. And then the demiurge creates simulation and Eden. So yes, the Eros ends up getting renamed by the demiurge as Adam. And the demiurge tries to rename Lilith to Eve to give like the first Adam and Eve. But then, so this is the Act 2. Act 2 is the story of Eden and how the fall goes into Atlantis. So again, very much Paradise Lost inspired. Okay, so demiurge traps, let me just put these down and let me pause it because I know this is about to go really fast. This might be some old imagery from last year that I've repulled, but anyway. So the demiurge traps Lilith and Eros in Eden. Lilith and Adam, right? But Lilith runs away, speaking the ineffable. This is the traditional Lilith storyline that you guys all know. Satan rescues her, yet they want to save Eros. So instead of leaving the simulation, they're like, you know what? No, we can't let him. Because he's still under the love spell. Anyway, he's recovering. So Satan and Lilith tried to rescue Adam, and now Psyche has gone into the simulation to try to save Eros, so she becomes the new Eve, so that they try to save Adam and Eve. So now this is the Gnostic story of Eden that I'm telling, where Lilith and Satan actually animate the snake. The snake tempts Eve to break through the simulation. So this is basically a story of where Eden is like a fake virtual reality, right? It looks like paradise, but you're actually trapped, so you best believe that you gotta get out of there kind of thing. And so I've written, like, to the best of my extent, this scenes where the snake wakes up Eve from the simulation. Eve helps Adam wake up from the simulation by inviting him to eat from the tree of knowledge. As you know, this is very much Genesis revisited. Adam and Eve realize that they are trapped aeons, right? And Lilith, Satan, Adam, and Eve have a reunion in Eden. However, the demiurge has gotten too powerful and joins forces with sin to make all of them into mortals and kicks them out of the Eden and puts them into the earth. Now, the earth is a simulation that we live in, and yeah, my next book, so not this one, but the third book will have modern day timeline. So a lot of this is kind of like explaining the precursor to modern day under the Gnostic lens. So what you're covering in the Act 2 is Sophia alarmed by the fall of Eden. Jesus volunteers to descend to earth, and the Holy Spirit tells Satan and Lilith that Jesus is coming. Right, so that's kind of what's going on. The spacesuits that it's making. The demiurge traps Lilith and Eros in Eden, right? Oh, so this is a lot of the... I probably haven't changed the text, my bad. So let me tell it without, because I forgot to change the text. So what ends up happening is Lilith, Satan, Adam, and Psyche. Adam is Eros, so yeah, it gets a bit complicated. But let me say it from their god names. Eros, Psyche, Eros, the god of love, Lilith, and Satan, two syzygy pairings, right, decide to do completely different things. Eros and Psyche, namely Adam and Eve, go on to create humanity under the guise that if they do so, then maybe Jesus Christ can reincarnate in the future, right? I know, it's a bit sacrilegious if you look at it from a few lenses, but let's keep rolling with it. Lilith and Satan decide to go into the Akashic Records, which is the fifth dimension, and do some time traveling there. So they want to go to Atlantis. So that's what ends up happening. So they end up splitting off. But before they split off, more aeons come in, and so this is your other pantheon Adam and Eve version. So every other pantheon that has their own version of Adam and Eve all now join up with them, and they all disperse. Now, one thing that they all have is artifacts. So they have these God Aeon artifacts. So they all give each other, Lilith and Satan, the artifacts so that they can continue on, go into the Akashic records, which is the 5th dimension. Because I've set this thing where, like, if they go into the Akashic records, which is like this library in the 5th dimensions, they can essentially traverse time, but they're still mortals. So there's this equation where, like, they can spend some time up here in the 5th dimension and time travel, but it does take away some of their mortality because they are mortals. And back then, you know how they lived like 900 years, so I'm kind of giving them a long lifespan. But anyway, so they kind of look for where's Atlantis, so they can, because they hear that there's going to be a great flood, so they like, we need to preserve the artifacts, so they end up going to Atlantis. So anyway, and it's this whole thing where, like, they're waiting because the Holy Spirit has told them that Jesus will descend to help save them, but they don't know when. All they know is that it will be a descendant of Adam and Eve. Lilith and Satan try to ask Enoch to stop the flood, so I have been inspired a bit by the books of Enoch. This is going viral right now, books of Enoch. And yeah, I don't know. I've rewritten it from a Gnostic lens, so it's a story retold. Anyway, I've got more gods coming to help them. So in Atlantis, Thoth does appear, and he's writing down the Atlantean tablets, as you know. Lilith and Satan log into the Akashics one more time, and finally they go onto Noah's Ark, and they give him all the artifacts, under the pretense that he will be one of the last remaining saving by God, the Demiurge, who is going to wipe them all. So the Demiurge then wipes out all of Atlantis, and this is the first mortality of Lilith and Satan is in Atlantis. They do not survive because only Noah's family survives. And every time they pass away in their mortality, they respawn in the simulation, but in either hell, purgatory, or heaven. So they are stuck in hell right now. So in hell, they log onto the records again, and kind of, so now what they're doing is basically they're trying to chase the timelines that Jesus will get there, so that eventually he is obviously number 2. He's a prefect. He's the Son of God. He's well above, like, the life force needed. And anyway, so there you have it. This is a kind of Shakespearean version of Satan and Lilith. Like, they are these divine soul syzygies, like soulmates. And this is them as gods of knowledge. And sort of the fall is, well, something that is in their nature as the number 9. So they make this promise to kind of always try to remember each other. But of course, every mortality, their minds are wiped. So they can only figure out what they've done once they're in hell, purgatory, or heaven, right? Within the simulation. But in each mortality, they kind of like learn something or something like this. So the first incarnation, I've got them at the Trojan War. I've also got them, you know, this is all the ending. Now this is kind of towards the 3rd act of this first book. I've got them in ancient Greece. I've got her channeling as Plato, because again, Plato is the author that is the earliest surviving work about Atlantis. So of course Plato is now in the picture because Plato's recounting. So I've got Lilith kind of channeling Plato a bit. And then Lilith as Mary Magdalene, finally, where Jesus lifts her curse. And Satan, instead of being this scary figure, which is not meant to be, is actually he's the adversary of God. So all he's doing here is really leveling up Jesus. So it's quite benevolent and wholesome. I hope, at least. So there's a few ways that Satan does these tricks to try to build Jesus up. You know, one of them to get him to use his gifts unjustly. Second, to offer dominion over the world if he worships him, and urging him to prove God can save them. But Jesus passes all these tests. Ultimately, Jesus dies for our sins and defeats sin, who is one of the main villains. Jesus rises from the death and defeats death. and Lilith of Satan witnessed the resurrection of Christ. But there's been some errors with the artifacts, so they basically, after they're done with the artifacts, there's been some errors. So that's kind of the end of book 1, and I've got at the very end, in purgatory. So okay, the end of first book is basically the end of Lilith and Satan incarnating into hell after every lifetime. So Jesus liberates them but they get trapped in purgatory because of the missing artifacts. So it's very Dante inspired, of course. Again, let me bring out that book. Dante, the Divine Comedy. So it's very, very much Divine Comedy inspired. So once they get out of purgatory, so the next few books is them going to purgatory into heaven and out of the simulation, right? But anyway, so he because that's how Dante has it. After you wipe your sins, you can enter purgatory, and purgatory is this period where you have to go through in order to get to heaven. So that's why they still have to go through purgatory. But anyway, Sophia regains strength in Pleroma and to intervene. So that's kind of the cliffhanger of the first book. That's where it ends. And now I'm at writing the second part. Okay, so this is the actual part of the stream, you guys. I hope that this has been entertaining so far. So book 2 is on its way. I literally just finished research and development. Finished, I say, but I'll probably have a few more weeks here and there. And then I'm going to start book 2, and I'm going to set myself a schedule so that I actually, complete it on time and within a year, because it's heavily encoded to the Old Testament. Unknown Decode is the current name for it. Yeah, and again, Unknown Decode inspired by the Old Testament of the King James Version. It's going to be very much inspired by Shakespeare as well. And, Shakespeare, the Old Testament, because King James is relatable to both of these. It's also going to have your chronological errors, but it's also going to have your conspiracies and your glitches, so expect both. I really wanted to merge them together, so it's an unreliable narrator and with lots and lots of characters. So you hear the heroes that are continuing, you got your Orpheus, the Monad, God, Jesus. They're the top heroes from my first book. They kind of exist at the higher level looking down. Then you get your anti-heroes who are trapped in the simulation, Lilith and Satan from book 1. Also Wotan and Frigg from book 1. They're quite main characters too. These are inspired by my friends too. If they're like high ranking in the stories, because they're really close to me. So the latest in Sophia, she's like the primary simulation goddess. Prometheus, Hecate, these are your anti-heroes. So they're essentially, they are do wrong but are redeemable. And then these are your villains. So you got Demiurge, Sin, Lucifer, and Discord, because Lucifer is different in my book series to Satan. Lucifer is an archon of Venus, while Satan is an archangel of God. So yeah, quite a difference there. Okay. One. So I really find it nice to get ahead in my world build by dividing everything by acts. So your first act is going to recount the story and tell it from more angles and perspectives, but from Adam and Eve to Noah to Jesus. And more characters. Seth, Enoch, Noah, Shem. Your Old Testament characters, right? They're kind of I wanted to gradually like ease into the next book. Very elaborate again, the story of Book of Enoch, the archangels, the great flood. So this is kind of, Gilgamesh, Imhotep, a lot of these characters kind of in more detail. Nimrod and the Tower of Babel, which is another story that I didn't get to include. A bit more detailed look into all these characters and Moses. But yeah, the Genesis flies by. Genesis and Exodus kind of covers all of these in the Old Testament. Akhenaten, Nefertiti. So more of these characters. Akhenaten is a really interesting figure. So after, you also got the second storyline, which is Jesus helping Sophia reunite with her syzygy, and how Sophia and Jesus kind of collaborate to help the world. That's another main storyline that I'm adding. So Jesus, after he descends into the world, helps and has saved humanity. He helps Sophia, who is healing. She's created the simulation with help of other, gods, but she's recovering, and one of the first thing is to kind of, with her syzygy, to repair the bonds, right? So they're syzygy of number 9. But what ends up happening is that Theletos, he means will. So Sophia's knowledge, Theletos, which is his name, means will. So if you think Crowley, do what thou will, he's very much going to end up being Crowley. So Theletos goes into the simulation, and what does he do? He becomes Paris of Troy. And as you know, the story of the Trojan War is that the goddess Discord gives the golden apple to Paris of Troy, who's meant to pick out who is the most beautiful goddess of them all. So he kind of has this will divine power trip, and this is kind of like a main reason why Sophia and Theletos, as divine syzygys, kind of have this discordance, so they're both kind of flawed, right? So you get Paris of Troy, Helen of Troy, Achilles, Odysseus, and Aeneas, which is, straight off characters of the Iliad and Odyssey. This is very much what inspired the Iliad and Odyssey. So the goddess Discord ends up throwing the apple to Paris of Troy. He has to decide Aphrodite, Athena, or Hera. Who is the most beautiful? Who is the most fairest? The goddess Discord throws this apple called with the inscription, "Who is the most fairest?" And this is the story of Paris of Troy.
The fairest.
And
it is
choosing.
Mine. No, I am the fairest. Choose me.
The fairest.
So this is
It is
Sophia's
mine.
better half,
No, I am the
Theletos, in my
fairest.
story. So
Choose
Theletos
me.
becomes Paris of Troy,
Fairest.
and he's obsessed with
No,
will,
I
with
am the fairest.
divine will. So he's become like kind of like this womanizer figure, and that's why he fits so well with Paris of Troy. So Sophia is kind of like witnessing that happen, and then at the very end, this is the story about Lilith and Satan in various incarnations that they're having, and primarily when Lilith does channel to King James, and that's kind of like one of the main stories. So first, let's go. So you left off with Lilith and Satan in Atlantis. Then they had their storyline in the Trojan War where they're Briseis and Achilles, and Lilith has this mortality where she's like, well, I was a woman back then, and women didn't have that many rights. So she ends up wanting to try male incarnation sometimes. So it's kind of like, because they're stuck in these reincarnation cycles, they're like figuring out what lives they should adapt to. I'm going to have Homer, Hesiod, Deus Melatus, Pythagoras, and other characters in this series. So that's kind of like they're characters that interact with, or you see POVs, Remus and Romulus. So a lot of it will be under a date. I think that's how I will write these books. Like, there will be a date, and each chapter will have a segment. Because I really like the story of Aeneas founding, being encouraged to build Rome. It's also a flat versus round earth argument, because I'm going to have your Anaxagoras, Socrates, Aristophanes, Plato kind of all argue about what's the shape of the simulation, and is it round or is it flat, and who are the, a lot of them were pushing it. Satan gets tricked by Hecate in ancient Greece, Pericles and Aspasia, that made it to Assassin's Creed Odyssey, so I'm going to pull that storyline. And Lilith incarnates as a man, she channels Plato. Aristotle, Alexander the Great, Ptolemy, and Euclid. These are more men that furthermore featured more men and their female counterparts. Again, it's if they were mainstream, I've added them. They ended up being a lot of guys, because that's what's ended up happening from back then. There's a lot of men. Eratosthenes, he's very much a globe earther, globe. So, yeah, because it is a simulation book, really exploring that. Julius Caesar, Herod the Great, Virgil, and Cleopatra. So Lilith is also going to be Cleopatra, because Cleopatra and Mark Antony.
Our moment is here.
Then I am ready to follow you.
Then come. The omens align.
So another kind of incarnation where they are kind of syzygies.
The omens align. Our moment is here.
What I was going to say about this one is that it's very much like, so Cleopatra and Mark Antony kind of inspired Romeo and Juliet because of the way that they passed and their love story. So because a lot of this is inspired by Shakespeare, I'm also kind of like Romeo and Juliet and these characters and scenes. Okay, oh my god, it's crazy. Ancient Greeks start the start of globe earth, but it's also ancient Anatolians more like it. The life of Jesus Christ. Jesus marries Lilith, reborn as Mary Magdalene. Jesus tempted by Satan, but that ultimately proves that he's worth it. And then Jesus Christ helps Lilith and Satan pass from hell to eventually he will help them pass to heaven. But there's chapters, so the first coming is to purgatory, the second coming is to hell. To second coming will get them to heaven, and then eventually maybe a third coming will get them to out of the simulation. I'm not sure, but Pontius Pilate and all these characters. So yeah, I'm kind of playing around how I'm gonna tell this, because there's there's literally like five. I know, like 5 timelines I'm doing at once. So it gets crazy. This is why I postpone this so much, because there's so much. Anyway, so once you finally get to Dante, and then I'm having Satan incarnate as Dante, because Dante ends up writing hell. It's a divine paradise. It's not a divine paradise. Divine. Oh my god, comedy. So, divine comedy, right? So, Beatrice is Dante's love interest, but Dante travels through hell, kind of like Satan did. So that's why I'm kind of giving him that POV. Up everybody else's character who ends up being incarnated too. So it's not just like Lilith and Satan, but you also figure out like what happened to Eros, what happened to Wotan, what happened to Shiva and Kali and all these characters I had earlier. You know what I mean? Like you'll see the character arcs for each of them. Now this era, I didn't have much to pull from, but here like Charlemagne, Nicholas Flamel, Vlad Dracul. I might do some vampire kind of influence for this one because I am covering the era where this happens. So Act 3 is now the third act of my sequel. So the third act is my favorite act, and it is about King James writing the King James version. So after you kind of like get the story retold about, you know, Genesis, so now you get kind of the story of King James first. You start with Queen Isabella and Christopher Columbus and finding of America, because America will become important later on for King James because he finds Jamestown.
This decree must be executed.
But this is Queen Isabella giving Christopher Columbus the papers.
This decree must be executed.
As you command, Your Majesty.
So this is like what I'm covering in this. So I get to do a lot of fun things with like the founding of America and all that. Again, a lot with the globe earth debate and one of my favorite characters that I'm adding is King Henry VIII, which allowed England to be a Protestant country in order for the King James to even exist.
This act of supremacy is now the law of the land. The king is now the supreme head of the Church of England. By the grace of God, this act
So King Henry VIII allowed it so that England was basically prepared to become a Protestant. But you'll get Anne Boleyn, Nostradamus, John Dee, Queen Elizabeth, Mary Queen of Scots, Edward Kelly, and, you know, John Dee, Edward Kelly summoning the angels, making up Enochian, all that's going to be in the book. I find that to be fascinating. I can't wait to, like...
Your Majesty, the device awakens.
Then let the power flow.
The stars align, Your Majesty, the device awakens.
Then let the power flow.
Yeah.
The stars align, Your Majesty. The
Oh my
device
God.
awakens.
Then let the
Elizabeth Bathory, Galileo Galilei, Pope Gregory, who changed the calendar system to the Gregorian calendar and messed everything up. René Descartes, John Milton, the author of Paradise Lost, who I think, because he inspired me so much, I am, you know, gonna really include a nice little chapter on him for writing this story. William Shakespeare, Sir Francis Bacon, King James, ultimately the co-authors of the King James Version Bible, but also Guy Fawkes. Why King James? King James, not Void. He was a poet, he funded Shakespeare, he authored the Protestant Bible, he criticized the Pope, he was throned by Queen Elizabeth I. Conspiracy, he was a queen. He was best friends with Sir Francis Bacon, crossed paths with John Dee and pardoned pirates in his era. He was pretty badass. So King James I is going to be channeled by Lilith because, he partakes during the witch trials, so that's a whole piece of it. But anyway, King James I of Scotland writes his first book at 18. He writes demonology about the witchcraft trials. And I was really inspired by how he was a poet. So he wrote his first book of poetry while he was King James VI of Scotland. So that's why he ended up showing so much interest in writing and, potentially authored the King James Version because of his interest so early on. He also funded Shakespeare, but one of his earlier works, Demonology, is written in the Socratic method, which is Plato. So back to that, Plato writing in the Socratic method, so did King James. So this is kind of like a full circle moment, right? So King's Company hires Shakespeare, Francis Bacon secretly, conspiracy that he wrote some of Shakespeare. King James start encoding the King James Bible. They hire a team of translators. The gunpowder plot. This is Shakespeare.
Consider the timing. The records show a discrepancy. Gentlemen, please. The script is perfect as it stands. Sire,
I love this. I feel like not only as a book but as a movie, and it'll look so good.
Sire, we must consider the timing. The
William Shakespeare.
Behold, the King James Bible. It is magnificent. The Word of God, indeed, a treasure. Behold, the King James Bible. It is magnificent. The Word of God, indeed, a treasure. Behold,
the King James Bible.
It is magnificent. The Word of God.
So then you get him, you know how in the Odyssey he stops in to retell the story? So really it's like a story within a story, because now you're getting King James telling the story of Eden to Jesus. And so it's kind of like this meta kind of storyline within a storyline. Like, this is the real storyline, but like the Odyssey and like Odysseus tells his story within a story, this is King James telling the story of the Bible through that. It ultimately ends with the gunpowder plot and kind of the conspiracy that was also an inside job and sort of like by the intelligence of King James. So that's also an interesting part of the book series. Anonymous is interesting. I love Guy Fawkes. Guy Fawkes is one of my favorite characters. I was really inspired by Anonymous growing up. So I really love that. I can add a scene,
Our alliance is sealed.
again, not only in the
Together
novels, but
we are
potentially in the future. So King James gets released, Galileo, Earth Propaganda, Great Fire London, Paradise Lost, and then I'm also going to put the last kind of is chapters, Mary Shelley and Frankenstein, but also Descartes figuring out the grid, the simulation, right? The Cartesian grid.
The line y equals x.
So I'm kind of going through a lot of these inventors and
The line y equals
famous
x.
people and things like
Cogito
that.
ergo sum, the foundation of all knowledge. And this globe charts our expanding world. A perfect cogito ergo sum,
Again, with the
foundation of all
globe,
knowledge.
I'm
And
a
this
flat
globe charts our
earther,
expanding
right? I'm a
world.
flat earther because
A
of what you
perfect
see in
cogito
the
ergo
Bible,
sum,
but
the foundation of all knowledge.
I'm really going
And
to
this
explore
globe
it,
charts our
and
expanding world.
if, I'm really excited to see what I have, but again, Paradise Lost, right after the Bible was made, Paradise Lost did a spin-off of Genesis, and so I'm also telling his story. So I really like the Great Fire of London as a sort of year and a theme. So after the Great Fire, you kind of follow his character.
Better to reign in hell.
So
than serve
after
in
his
heaven.
character,
Better to reign in hell.
oh my god, the servant in heaven. Then you get your Isaac Newton, Blackbeard, the pirate, Benjamin Franklin, George Washington, and these people who are fundamental in funding starting the United States. And of course, King James had founded Jamestown, but also
Apples that
Francis
float?
Bacon.
What manner of force is this? Ah, accursed orchard, me hearties. Focus, gentlemen, we must proceed.
Apples that float.
So random.
What
This
manner of force is this?
Ah,
Ah, accursed orchard, me hearties. Focus, gentlemen, we must proceed.
Apples that float.
Sir Francis
What manner of
Bacon
force
also
is
wrote
this?
The New
Ah,
Atlantis,
accursed
which was
orchard, me
fundamental to how the United States was formed. Adam Weishaupt, the founder of the Bavarian Illuminati, Marie Antoinette, Sybil Ludington from the American Revolution, William Clark, and Sacagawea. So these characters that I learned about growing up and never really followed
What is
through
it?
with.
The path is clear.
The river
You know,
crossing is watched.
News from the east.
What is it? The path is clear.
The river crossing is
So
watched.
this takes a lot of research,
What is it?
meticulous.
The path is clear.
But yeah, hopefully I get to bring it to life. And I really love this timeline of Lord Byron, Percy Shelley, and Mary Shelley. Mary Shelley read author of Frankenstein, which is the first science fiction novel. And so I love them because one of my first English classes in university, I had to read some of their work.
To inspiration. Indeed.
And they were like best friends. And so she's very Lilith coded too. So I'm having her channel Lilith. And you kind of see one of the first female fiction authors on camera. Again, there's obviously movies about this already, but kind of within a broader scheme. John D. Rockefeller, Bram Stoker, the author of Dracula. And then Nikola Tesla, kind of your last character storyline.
The sketches are aligning perfectly, indeed. Now for the harmonic integration, observe the energy fields. The sketches are aligning perfectly, indeed. Now for the harmonic integration, observe the energy fields.
So
The
yeah,
sketches are aligning perfectly, indeed. Now for the
the-
harmonic integration.
There's no second coming of Jesus in the second book. Obviously, it goes just up until kind of the late 1800s. And it's just really about documenting the Bible and King James story
The
and
sketches are aligning
the well,
Indeed. Now for
I
the
think I
harmonic integration,
multiplied.
observe the energy fields.
so you get the point. So let's skip that. Okay.
Now for the harmonic integration.
So the
Integration.
last thing is you get Eliphaz and Levi drawing the tarot, and the Letos, which is Sophia's other half, becoming Aleister Crowley, and he's the ultimate villain in the third act of my sequel. So he's invoking the Babylon woman, so that's what he does at the very end. And a lot of Crowley's work ends up being quite demonic influenced in terms of some of it's respectable, but not all of it. And so Sophia is kind of witnessing that, and so she's hoping to like guide him. So she confronts the Babylon woman, which ends up being, you know, Lilith
This place is magical.
coded. And so
The energy here is
yeah,
Look, this place is magical.
so he helps
The energy
helps
here
her
is beautiful.
towards the end, but I don't know how it's going to end just yet because I have a whole year before I'm writing it. But this series is inspired by Troy, Jesus Christ Superstar, Monty Python, Pirates of the Caribbean, National Treasure, The Da Vinci Code, and that's primarily it. And then so I've kind of drawn up some mock what my third and fourth book will be. The third one is from the early 1900s to late 2000s, and so it encompasses kind of like the story of a moon landing, but also the fake moon landing in the 60s, but also Woodstock. But it'll be about the Apocrypha. So it's more reincarnation kind of through Lilith and Satan, but this time through the psychedelic movement of the 60s. And it's going to be inspired by the Apocrypha, which I had there, Apocrypha. But the Necronomicon, oh yeah, H.P. Lovecraft's the main character. Tolkien's the main character. It'll be kind of Twilight coded, 50 Shades even, because it's a bit more modern day, this third book. But it'll start with H.P. Lovecraft and J.R. Tolkien, Manly P. Hall and Joseph Campbell. They're kind of like the last remaining pillars of the male coded fiction.
This light is perfect.
Like I'm imagining them as if they were all friends, like guy friends. A lot of them never
I
met.
finished the sketch. It's incredible.
But I'm doing this like kind of like trippy, you know, unreliable narrator, as if they're all tripping and they eventually met each other, like as if Lovecraft met Tolkien.
Let's keep studying.
So it's like this parallel reality where anything goes, and I'm kind of having them cross or be inspired by one another. H.P. Lovecraft is older than Tolkien, but they relatively around the same era. They just, I don't know if they actually read each other's content.
Yes, and the symbols match the constellations. Exactly.
But yeah, H.P. Lovecraft, it's as if Lilith was deciding whether to marry H.P. Lovecraft or Tolkien. This is like the story.
We are one with the cosmos. The symbols align. The energy flows.
So yeah, it's a
between
kind of
us.
an interesting
We are one
premise,
with the
but I thought it would be
The
interesting
symbols
to
align.
end off
The
something
energy
like
flows
this.
between us. We are
Again, more Tolkien and H.P. Lovecraft. I'm obsessed. Again, this is further off. This is next year, but I wanted to tease it so you know where this whole entire thing is going. If that makes sense. Of course, then you get your rock stars. You guys know I'm a fan of Jimi Hendrix, Jim Morrison, etc. So, we're almost to the end, I swear. Oh my god. So yeah, this part will be as if like everyone's tripping at Woodstock. Because why not? I think it'd be so cool to have this play out on cinema.
Man, this is the life.
But primarily like Hendrix's friendship with the Beatles and Morrison. It's what's really I'm gonna highlight in this one. And you know, Hendrix with his Electric Lady is very Lilith coded as well.
Peace and love, Jimmy. This is the vibe, right? Yeah, it is. Hey, John, peace, man.
My two best friends.
This
So
is
it's
the vibe, right? Yeah, it is. Hey, John, peace, man. Peace
also
and
as
love,
if
Jimmy.
Lilith had
This
to
is
choose
the
between
vibe.
Jimi Hendrix
Whoa,
or
look at this
John
energy.
Lennon.
It's
As if they're
beautiful. It's
tripping.
connecting us. Let's see where it goes.
They were actually
Whoa, look at
best
this
friends. This one's
energy.
actually
It's
true.
beautiful. It's
Jimi Hendrix
connecting
and
us.
John Lennon were best
see where
friends.
it
So
goes.
I think that's
Whoa,
so
look at this energy. It's beautiful. It's connecting us.
like it's not really been played out on movies so far. They always like leave out the part that they're all friends. So I kind of wanted to get them all together and kind of bring them on screen. And at this point, after Kurt Cobain, I think I might have some issues with copyright in terms of bringing these artists into the story. So I might fictionalize once I get to this part of the story, because yeah, what change, very, very, very different change in culture, vibe shift. But I'm going to include some of you truth seekers. And then I'm also including myself as one of the characters inspired in the third book. So that's me. One of my best friends. Truth seeker. I can actually say that. Truth seeker Alex. And some other people, decoders that we've learned from in terms of books and series and stuff like that. You might recognize you guys. A lot of you guys I wanted to keep you not have your real names. But yeah, if you're here, you've inspired this story. But yeah, it's about H.P. Lovecraft writing the Necronomicon, Tolkien writing the Lord of the Rings, Elvis kicking off the rock and roll era, Beatles story, JFK, Hendrix meets the Beatles in England. So you get kind of this wide range of history and culture and intertwining. You get the Paul is Dead conspiracy of the Beatles, the fake moon landing, Hendrix at Woodstock, the Isle of Wight festival where all the rock and roll legends get together, several rock and roll legends murdered towards the end. And then my character is called Galaxy, so she's a fan of Hendrix and she lives through the PSYOP. She moves to London. She meets other people who are reincarnated. She meets H.P. Lovecraft and Tolkien reincarnated. And then she starts realizing that she might have this Lilith archetype. And so she tries to find her Suzuki, or her other half, and all these, people that she meets along the way, the reincarnated legends. But then World War III hits, and then that's kind of the end of the third book. And the third book's going to be inspired by Spinal Tap, Back to the Future, Wayne's World, Sense8, Bill and Ted, Face the Music. I know, crazy. But I hope that you can now see how each book tells a different chapter of my interests and stories, but also I feel like these are very collective conscious interest stories that we all know and love, and each theme is different. This one's fantasy, this one's archaic detective, and then the rock and roll one, and then this one's the last one. The last one I've not really planned out as much, kind of gonna leave it towards the end, but it's about the Project Bluebeam and ufology, and if they ran the whole concept that aliens exist. And it's also about the merging of galaxies and kind of trying to prevent the simulation from collapsing, but also, ranking it more benevolent. But it's going to be inspired by the New Testament, Brave New World, Battle Royale, Hunger Games, and obviously some mythos, Cthulhu mythos. And who will claim Lilith as her soulmate? So now she has Satan. She's got other gods. So she's kind of you kind of go through her life, who is her actual soulmate? Does it end up being Satan? Does it change? It's also inspired by Star Wars, Flash Gordon, Idiocracy, In Time, Cloud Atlas, and The Matrix, of course. So I've got a lot to go through towards the end. Thank you so much to the acknowledgements. If you've helped me conceive of ideas, I've tried to include your name. Thank you so much to all of you for helping me figure out, what to do. So that's it for now. That is my presentation. So thank you so much for joining me. I know that it's been kind of a lot. But yeah, I hope that it's something that you're interested in potentially reading, or even not having to read. Eventually this is the content that I'm gonna adapt to the AI movies, because I interact with content a lot better when it's movies too. So yeah, if you're just waiting around to see how it looks like in 5 years, great. If you're here because you enjoy the process and the behind the scenes, that's awesome too. I hope that it's kind of a fun time. I know when I first started researching what I should do, it helped me a lot to like see the process that other writers have. So hopefully that's something that we can talk about. But anyway, yeah. Here's to another year of writing and hopefully a sequel to Mortal Lost City next year. I have 10 months or so to create the sequel. I'm gonna start by my stream on. Wait. My next stream is on Game of Thrones, and I'm gonna try for it to be next week. But basically, Game of Thrones is gonna be the next thing I read, and I'm gonna speed read it because I don't have time to read the entire series, and I was not really a fan of the TV show, but I think it's a good place to learn how to write about all those decades that I've shared with you guys, and like the detail of these eras, because a lot of this is fictional, but kind of is inspired by 1000 to 500 AD, and that's kind of like the main stuff I'm covering. So yeah, join me in my next stream, Game of Thrones. But that's all for today, and I hope y'all have a wonderful evening. Happy Saturday. Goodbye, y'all.